So I want to talk a little bit, obviously, about Pearl Harbor, the day of the Japanese attack. When were you first alerted that there was an attack happening? What happened that made you realize something was going on? Something was not normal?
We were on the west side of the island of Oahu, Oahu, and we got in our flivver and start driving towards Wheeler Field, which was up in the hills, and Schofield Barracks, which was up also in the hills somewhat. Approaching Schofield Barracks, three aircraft flew right overhead. And I looked up and I said to my buddy, I said, who in the hell are they? And they had the rising sun on the side and what have you. Single seaters. And I said, I've never saw those before. I wonder who they belong to. And I said, we might be at war. Jokingly. Well, about 3 or 4 minutes later, we're now coming out of the hill and looking down. The north part was a little higher hill, and they just began to bomb the ships in the Pearl Harbor part, and they were beginning to bomb the hangars at Hickam Field. And so we rushed, got in the main gate, waved in, went to our orderly room, and believe it or not, our adjutant was nearby, just came in also. And so I asked the adjutant, I said, what shall we do? Well, what do we do? And he said, be damned if I know. Well, it's Sunday now, remember, and we were off, so to speak, Sunday, and so that left me free to roam. So I decided I'm going to run across to the big barracks for protection, which was a very dumb thing to do. No sooner than I started in the parade ground to go across to get to the big barracks, a zero, whatever, and I foolishly got in his sights. I thought, he did pull his trigger. So I turned around and ran back. Good thing it hit all over me. And he was trying to hit the big barracks. They were trying to torpedo the barracks as well, because it was double-decker, and he was trying to slide a torpedo into the middle. So I ran back to my barracks, and they started a line to get rifle guns. And I got in line. That was the second time I was fired on. But I lucked out again because I was pretty close to the tail end of the line at that particular time,
So you were in line to get issued a rifle, and then they started shooting at you, right?
Yes, yeah. Yes, I managed to empty clips, one clip each on the shooting at it, but I couldn't see any hit, or maybe it did, but it didn't.
Right.
He was gone. Outside of that, that was it. That was the extent of my firing. After which, I went to the hospital, and near the hospital, a bulldozer was digging a trench. Mm-hmm. And the only reason for that trench was to put body parts. In other words, the wounded were being hauled in. And then I didn't see them picking up any of the dead. I guess that would come later. They're dead. And by the way, the bays where the soldiers slept, they had wall lockers in the middle to separate one side of the bay to the other. Every now and then you would open a door, and there was no damage, but there would be a dead soldier in there from the concussion of the bomb. No scratch, no nothing, but the concussion killed the individual.
So how come you went to the hospital? Did they send you to the hospital?
I happened to wander up there, and then they asked me to stand guard for about an hour, which I did. Yeah.
So-
You should have seen me. I was still in civilian clothes, being Sunday, and I had a rifle bullets, 2 belts slapped over my shoulders, and a 45, and a bunch of clips.
During most of the attack, you were guarding a hospital.
That, and after I got through there, I went back to the organization, and there was nobody there at the orderly room, and then I ended up with the Coast Artillery. They needed help, and so I was given a machine gun pit, and now it was now turning. I'd say it was getting dark about then when I did this, and the reason I say it was getting dark because had I realized where the pit was, right in the middle of a lot of gasoline trucks and bombs, and I didn't realize that until the next morning. That next morning, one of my buddies came by and he says, "Hey, the commander's looking for everybody. We need to work on aircraft. Get back to the office." And so I went up to the captain in charge of the pit, the Coast Artillery guy, and said, "I have to go back to my organization." And the SOB said, he said, "You left your post. I could have you shot," that kind of stuff. I should have just walked away. I didn't belong to him, but he indicted me into the Coast Artillery. He thought.
Right. At what point were you able to sort of, for yourself, kind of assess the damage that had been done by this attack? Do you remember that?
To really see the damage, now the Oklahoma was rolled over, and there were individuals still in that boat bottom,
Right.
tapping. And when I heard that, I didn't want to hear the tapping because that would have been.
Yeah.
I didn't want to live with that for the rest of my life, and so it took days. And the hangars, and let me mention this: on the other side of the barracks, where the tower was, an open field, they bombed the hell out of it. There was nothing there. But it was to have been what they call the aqua system, the gasoline tanks, big tanks. But as Americans do, they changed their mind, and the Japanese didn't know it. Apparently they had the original layout plans of the base and knew where the tanks were, but they weren't. They were moved over by the tower, and they bombed it. They were accurate. That proved they were pretty damned accurate, but the tanks were not there, as you see.
How did the attack make you feel?
Being attacked, how did I feel? You know, I never gave that much of a thought. I knew that there was going to be a war, but with the Germans. There were no two ways about it, which was another reason why I enlisted. Might as well get in there, find me a position, and I just accepted it, and that's about the most I can give you there, and
Did it, though, in a way, for you personally, let's say, did it accelerate your desire to want to be a pilot?
that was a necessity.